Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome back. We were discussing, of course, the 79th United Nations General Assembly session. I did that between 5 and 6, and now we're back with my show, Newsroom, and we are continuing our discussion now that our Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has addressed the United Nations 79th General Assembly session and highlighted very important points. We've been joined by 3 guests in the newsroom, and 1 guest will be joining us online to discuss more on the different aspects of the speech of our Premier. In the studios, we've been joined by 3 guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. On my very right is Dr. Saira Nawaz Abbasi, International Relations Expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Saira, to join us. Then we've been joined by Zamir Ahmad Awan Sahab, he's a Foreign Affairs Expert. Zamir Sahab, pleasure to have you here. And finally, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, Foreign Affairs Analyst, who have joined us as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Saira, to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Dr. Saira. Dr. Saira, we have highlighted issues that plague the world, the Middle East, like Palestine and now Lebanon, this region which includes illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and also the terrorism that emanates from the Afghan soil. And this is something that we have seen and heard in the speech of our Premier as well. How important was it for our Premier to highlight that in this auspicious gathering of 193 nations?
Thank you very much, Omar, for inviting me. This platform is very, very significant, which shows multilateralism and the importance of multilateralism at international level. So anything which is highlighted at this level would be put forward towards the whole community of the states. So I think highlighting these points are the reaffirmation of the Pakistan stance over how much Pakistan want to have the peaceful coexistence with the other states, and how much Pakistan is a peaceful state, and Pakistan wants the rule of international law and international justice, which is based on equality, equally important for the people of Kashmir, for the people of Palestine, and for the people of Ukraine as well.
True. And so also for the African nations that are going through certain conflicts.
So I think this is reaffirming, re-strengthening Pakistan's stance at this level, which is very, very significant.
All right, Zamir Sahab, let's begin with the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is one of the issues that has been highlighted, and of course our Premier did talk about how the people of Jammu and Kashmir are struggling for the last 70 years, like the Palestinians and the 900,000 plus Indian troops that are terrorizing the Kashmiris, and how India is seizing Kashmiri land and allowing outsiders to settle in the region. How important is a collective resolve by the United Nations General Assembly as well as by the United Nations Security Council to work towards that, because this is an issue that has been pending within the United Nations since decades?
First of all, I want to congratulate Prime Minister of Pakistan. He delivered excellent speech and raised the point of Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir. It is the voice of the 250 million people of the Pakistan. Prime Minister has elaborated the situation very well and covered very well. As a matter of fact, it is almost more than 7 decades India is illegally occupying Kashmir. United Nations Security Council has passed several resolutions on Kashmir, and India is always rejecting and not implementing. It is our moral and diplomatic and political obligation that we highlight these issues on all important platforms. United Nations General Assembly session is a very important platform, and we have to project our point of view and our concerns on Kashmir. And Prime Minister has successfully reflected his views and the nation's feeling.
All right, coming to Palestine also, this is also a burning issue that our Prime Minister has pointed towards. He talks about Israel committing systemic slaughter of the Palestinians, and mere condemnation is not enough. This is the point that I'd really like to ask you. He says mere condemnation is not enough and we need to act now to end atrocities. When you look at the polarization on how the world needs to act towards vis-a-vis Israel, what is the need of the hour, and did our Premier highlight it in a more robust manner on what needs to be done for this conflict that has been raging since almost a year to end?
Thank you, Omar. There is a viable solution is really important. It's a need of the time. The mere talks or the discussions going on or the conferences. This is not going to bring any solution. So, and Mr. Prime Minister, he actually emphasized on the concrete solution. There should be a solution, and when we look into this polarized world, and we can have the idea now the states are coming on the same ground. You know, the America and France, they proposed at 21 days, you know, a ceasefire.
But there's also a question mark on that, isn't there?
Yeah, but you know, the possibilities are there, and we should be optimistic towards it. And I believe that things are going to be okay. There are two grounds. One is that they proposed it because obviously, you know, there are so many things on the stake, and international community, they want to resolve the issue now on the, you know, let's say on humanitarian basis, or let's say on the strategic basis, or let's say, what if we say that you know, Israel getting tired of fighting on so many fronts, you know, Hezbollah and then Hamas, and then you know the Houthis are there. So it's for you know, war is a very expensive option for the further, I mean, for more years, you know, Israel not seeing a very prominent you know, success out of it. And the other thing is that America is interested to solve this to get a viable solution. Why? Because you know, the Democrats want to probably take the credit of solving the issue because the elections are near, and they might be trying, because you know, the Trump, he's saying that once I'm going to come in the office, I'm going to solve all the pending issues. So probably America is trying to take the, you know, the Democrats, they are saying, okay, let's us.
But you know, let's I mean, for example, this 3 agenda ceasefire deal of Joe Biden that has been in the works for weeks and weeks and weeks, you know, has never really been implemented in letter and principle. Only now we take our 21-day ceasefire, you know, deal again that has been proposed by other countries. But this is not that 3-phase deal that Joe Biden had proposed, and we don't see where it is going. So you know, there is a lot of question marks where that is concerned. Coming to you, you know, Dr. Saira, Nawaz, Abbasi, I'd like to also highlight a little bit more on Palestine and what our Prime Minister said. He said Israel's genocidal war in Gaza is a threat to world peace, and he said we feel the chill of a new world order. Do you feel a new world order is in the making?
Well, that depicts that the winds are changing, like even the nature of war in the Middle East has also been changed, because one is the widening of the conflict, other is that America also seems to be so much in a haste to take up Israel as its client states, to be more assertive in the region, because at the one day they give the statement that we want to end this war, and the next day they approve the aid package for the Israelis. So that shows their two-side double face and hypocrisy at the international level. So definitely international systemic changes are taking place all over the world, and particularly in the Middle East. And we have seen that there is some kind of haste that is going on among the power centers to be more assertive, to widen the scale of the war, to bring the great powers into the conflict, to bring the proxies of the region into the conflict, hence not being able to end the war. And there is also, we have seen the lack of political will and political commitment. So that has an implication on the international level organizations also, because people all around the world, and even in this United Nations General Assembly session, you have seen that almost all of the states, or most of the states, they have condemned the Israel's action, and they have indirectly also condemned the American blind eye towards Israel. So if nothing could be achieved, if there is no rule of law, if there is constant violation of international conventions and genocidal acts are taking place, and international powers could not be able to prevent it, the responsibility to protect doctrine, the Geneva Convention, the UNO, UNSC, if they are unable to do anything, of course that will bring a change at the international level also.
And I think that needs to be prevented, and that is what our Prime Minister has highlighted, that he sees a new wave of world order you know, taking place, and that needs to be prevented before it's way too late. Faisal Raza Khan joins us online. He's a colleague of ours and also has a huge you know, how should I say, repertoire as far as reporting is concerned. Faisal, thank you very much to have joined us. I'd like to understand what our Prime Minister said as far as Afghanistan is concerned. 80,000 soldiers martyred, he said. He talked about 2 decades of terrorism in Pakistan. He talked about the APS school carnage and the economy of $150 billion that has been lost in Pakistan. And of course, then he talks about this new wave of externally financed terrorism that is slowly and steadily creeping into Pakistan, which includes the fitna al-Khawarij and other elements. What more did he say vis-a-vis Afghanistan?
Definitely, sir. First of all, thank you very much, Omar Khalid, for having me in your show. Yes, definitely, Prime Minister's speech was altogether very compact and very authentic in a sense that what Pakistan is actually facing within and at its borders because of the 40 years of long journey when Pakistan actually not only given refuge to the Afghan citizens in Pakistan as a refugee, but also Pakistan has sacrificed a lot when it comes to the Soviet era invasion in Afghanistan. Then afterwards there was a long war by the international forces. Then afterwards when it was happened at least 3 years ago when Afghan Taliban took over in Kabul, Pakistan was always supportive to them, and Pakistan has not only supported them with the morally, politically, internationally, but also Pakistan has extended every hand when it comes to their economy and to stabilize the country. But unfortunately, what is happening in Afghanistan is that the different terrorist organizations has the allegiance with the Afghan Taliban right now, and Afghan Taliban are actively supporting those terrorist organizations. They are giving them refuge. They are launching attacks from their soil on Pakistan. And unfortunately, from the last decade, when Pakistan, until 2015, Pakistan eliminated at least the terrorist organizations from its soil and pushed them towards Afghanistan.
That is true, Faisal. So many different operations that our armed forces have, undergone, and that have been successful and have resulted in thwarting this menace of terrorism that has again crept in through the Afghan soil in the name of Int'l, Khawarij and all these other elements that have joined us. Thank you very much, Faisal, to have joined us. But I'd like to understand also, Zamir Saab, taking this Afghan issue forward as well. Our Premier talks about counter-terrorism operations that need to be done with other countries as well. In the past, if I recall, China has pledged to cooperate with Pakistan in counter-terrorism operations. So has the United States. Do you think we should now seek their help and also of other regional countries?
I believe that terrorism is a global phenomenon and is a very complex situation. All over the world, the terrorists are engaged in different ways. Pakistan alone has tried its best, and we achieved something, definitely, but still we are not able to eliminate terrorism completely, absolutely. We need international collaboration. In the past, we have the history to collaborate with US and China, and still I think there is a space and there is a need to collaborate with international players. Now, I think there are more countries to extend collaboration with Pakistan to fight against the terrorism. Counter-terrorism is a need of the time. Many countries, many nations are victim of the terrorism, and we should unite and have the collective efforts to eliminate absolutely.
I think this is a resolve that Pakistan will take it to its end by eliminating the very last fitna al-Khawarij. Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, also our Prime Minister highlighted Pakistan's economic revival in the form of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, in the form of the second phase that has now been initiated and launched, and talked about the investments in renewable energy and other sectors as well, a new era of development and modernization. Does the world realize how Pakistan is moving forward economically?
Well, it's a long process, but another thing which Mr. Prime Minister gave emphasis, that is the inequality the world is facing on the basis of economics. How the Western world, they are taking advantage of so many things, and we are not able to do that. And yet we can connect this economic development with the peaceful situation in in KP and in Balochistan. That is crucial as well, and we can relate it with the terrorism. We are having that SCO upcoming meeting side by side, and we are going to talk about it. And previously we had a very good meeting on economics and trade level with the SCO members, and that was marvelous. And they suggested so many points for the bilateral economic trade and investment, and that is going to be
and because Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha, the fact is that when I talk of economic development, we also see that these all same nefarious designs that are trying to destabilize Pakistan also are destabilizing or trying to destabilize Pakistan's economic development.
Yeah.
So I think these are more or less, the both are interconnected. So we need to fight.
Interconnected, and world needs to understand, especially the regional players, they need to understand that it's not just the state develops, it's the whole region develops.
True.
If you want to, if a state, let's say China, let's say India, or let's say even Afghanistan, if they wants to have a strong, robust economy, they needs to end this terrorism along with the Pakistan. They should help us, they should collaborate with us, and there should, and China recently announced a bilateral agreement on to counter terrorism, and there is a RATS under SCO, and they efficiently they work on it. And yes, the regional actors, they should understand that they are going to face the heat of this thing, and Central Asia is facing that issue, because you know that Khorasan and Al Kharij, they are they are moving toward the Central Asia as well, and then African states as well. So this terrorism is, just as Sir said, that it's a global phenomena, and yes, we have to deal it not individually, but collective effort.
Dr. Saira, Islamophobia. This is something we've talked about in other shows as well together, but herein also our Prime Minister highlighted the importance to curb the menace of Islamophobia. He talks about, how it is another trouble that is engulfing the world, and how whether it be the desecration of the Holy Quran, whether it be the violence against Muslims, this has been they are starting to take a turn of its own. And he also talked about the Hindu supremacist agenda in India that is also affecting the 2 billion plus Muslims that are present within India as well. What needs to be done on a collective level, on a United Nations level, as far as curbing Islamophobia is concerned? Because we don't hear many voices when it comes to curbing Islamophobia. We've heard our country, we've heard Russia talk about it, but how many countries are openly, highlighting Islamophobia and the need to curb it?
First of all, countries need to understand this fact that terrorism and extremism is not just associated with one ideology. But unfortunately, in the wake of the global war on terrorism after 9/11, this narrative had been built by the international establishment. Basically, the war against terrorism was not war against terrorism, it was a war against one ideology, and Muslims were being targeted and being blamed for this thing. Now, what to do about this is that I think the role of Muslim states is very pertinent to take up this issue. Like our Prime Minister has mentioned, all other head of the states and head of the government should mention and bring this, put forward this proposal that hurting the religious sentiments will not bring any fruitful thing for the maintenance of global peace and global stability. And Pakistan and the Muslim states particularly, they are very much anti-violence. They are peaceful states, and our religion teaches us to remain peaceful towards even non-believers. So that has to be put forward at the international level, whether it's United Nations General Assembly or other multilateral forums. The role of OIC is very crucial in that. They need to be very, very proactive in bringing this issue of Islamophobia around the world and educating people, and through the diplomatic means and measures, through the conferences, through the dialogue, through exchange programs. These are the fundamental things to do. And at the government level, of course, presenting the right picture about the Islam and the Muslims around the world is very pertinent, I believe in this.
And I think the United Nations should also play a very, very important role as far as, highlighting through its different agendas the role of our religion and the role of Muslims. Islam has been the most peaceful of our religions, and this has been somehow deformed in such a manner that people equate our religion with terrorism, and that is a fallacy that needs to be tackled with and corrected before it's way too late, because we already see people equating our religion with a certain form of violence. Zamir Saab, another thing also that our Prime Minister highlighted was the issue in Ukraine. He talks about a immediate end to the Ukraine conflict. What can be done? to end this? It has almost been 2 years that this conflict has been going on, and we heard Mr. Zelensky also talk about it, and of course the way he highlighted, and we also know that today there are going to be about 20 countries that are going to get together to propose a solution to the Ukraine conflict. How important is to work together to end this conflict once and for all? It has gone for way too long.
If I'm allowed, I can continue.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Dr. Saira has said excellent. I endorse her fully. But I want to add something.
All right.
I have served as a diplomat and traveled internationally. I have encountered many foreigners, especially the Western people. In the West, there is a distorted image of the Muslims. They have very negative perspective about the Muslim. They always think that the Muslims are the terrorists, Muslims are the no rights for the women, the Muslims are ignorant, and Muslims are just having a sword and killing everybody. They have very negative image about the Muslim. Unfortunately, some of our Muslim brothers also behave in a negative manners. It is, I think, is our duty. We project Islam to the Western world in its true spirit.
So, Misa, for example, I mean, let me be very blunt. What is happening in Afghanistan, as our Prime Minister also said, that we have expectations of the Afghan government as far as the education of girls is concerned and the political inclusion is concerned. This is something that we need to, highlight, that what we see through what the Afghan interim government is doing is not what Islam really projects. Islam has been the first one to prioritize or to give education for all genders, the women and men included. We remember the first spouse of our Holy Prophet who was a businesswoman. So, how can you deviate from that very norm and simplicity that Islam represents?
I think we always blame West about Islamophobia, but we also must accept our responsibilities too. Our media, our individual Muslim, not only the Pakistan, the whole Muslim Ummah to project its true spirit, true face of Islam. That is important. Anyhow, Prime Minister has covered this aspect, and United Nations General Assembly session is the appropriate platform for such things. And now let me come to the Ukraine. Ukraine issue is getting more complicated once the NATO has involved more deeply, and they are supplying the long range weapons and capability of the
it doesn't have the nod of the US.
They have decided, they have the decision already. The NATO chief has already decided, he has made this statement that once the Ukraine have this capability, it will be more complicated. It is still, there is a time that we should start the negotiation and convince the NATO also and all the warring partners. Russia has shown a flexibility to a certain extent, and I think that China is playing very important role in bringing end to the Ukraine war. Pakistan is also peace-loving nation, and we also can play our due role in ending this war.
All right. We've been joined by Dr. Maleeha Lodhi. She's a former UN ambassador. Thank you very much, Dr. Saira, to have joined us. Coming to the speech of our Premier, I'd like to highlight a side that I haven't yet discussed, because I saw you were also here a few moments back talking to my colleagues. Africa, the African countries and the conflicts that are resonating within the African continent also is something that has been highlighted by our Premier. He said that we need to cooperate with them and resolve the regional conflicts. When you look at Africa as well, we see a lot of talk as far as Palestine is concerned, and I've discussed many aspects of that with you, or as well as in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but we don't talk as much about the African nations and the conflict that is, the conflicts that are present within the African nations. What can be done within the United Nations level as far as resolving those issues is concerned? Dr. Saira, are you with us?
Yeah, but I didn't hear all your question. I don't know where you started and where you ended. I have no idea.
Dr. Saira, let me just precise it for you. I was just wanting to ask about the part of the speech of our Premier when he talks about the African nations and how we need to resolve the conflicts that are present within the African continent. How important could or should the role of the United Nations General Assembly be in that regard?
Well, it already has a role. So does the Security Council. They meet regularly on Sudan, where there is a major conflict going on. So, I mean, that's nothing new. I think the more important thing is to look at and assess whether this speech was as wide-ranging or broad-based statements of foreign policy as previous statements have been by heads of state and heads of government. Remember, the importance of the General Assembly speech for Pakistan is that it gives the country an opportunity to use the global platform of what I called the Parliament of the World to highlight Pakistan's core priorities as well as give an explanation of its foreign policy across many issues and across many continents. I think from that point of view, if you look at the Prime Minister's speech, clearly his focus was on Gaza, the major conflict going on there, and rightly so. The suffering of the Palestinians, the tragedy of Palestine, all of that was referred by him in his speech. He also made reference to Israel's attack on Lebanon. Again, this has pushed, as you know, the world to a knife's edge. We're on the brink of what could be a major, wider regional conflict. So I think his emphasis there was on very current issues that are close to Muslim hearts and Muslim minds, issues that are important to the people of Pakistan. But I must say that I was a little disappointed that his speech wasn't as wide-ranging a statement of Pakistan's foreign policy as have been speeches in the past. But having said that, I think his emphasis on Kashmir, again, occupied Kashmir naturally, it figures in every Prime Minister's speech. I don't remember anyone's speech ever for the last 70 years, if not more, that did not emphasize Kashmir.
Afghanistan was also something that was mentioned, the new wave of terrorism that has emanated from the Afghan soil and how that needs to be cut through counter-terrorism efforts.
Yes, you're right. That was also mentioned. Again, that's ongoing issue of importance to Pakistan, and therefore for the Prime Minister to explain to the international community how this is impeding Pakistan's efforts and also creating a security challenge for the country. And, to also remind the Afghan authorities that they had made a commitment to the international community that their soil would not be used for attacks on another country. So I think, that part, again, that's an important aspect of Pakistan's foreign policy and security policy. I think on India, if we can turn to India for a minute, he, again, reiterated Pakistan's long-standing policy. Again, there's nothing new. Every Prime Minister goes and talks about Kashmir. Every Prime Minister also uses that platform to say if there was any Indian aggression, Pakistan would respond. So, I would say again, this is a reiteration of Pakistan's well-known foreign policy.
Comment on a particular statement that the Prime Minister made. He says we feel the chill of a new world order when he talks of the situation in the Middle East. Do you feel, from somebody who's served in the United Nations and in so many other countries, do you feel that a new world order is in the making?
No, on the contrary. I think there's a new world disorder. There is no order. Multilateral institutions are under a lot of stress. A rules-based international order has eroded. There is no order. If there was order, why would Israel be defying international law? If there was order, why would Prime Minister Modi have taken the illegal step of absorbing a disputed territory into the Indian Union? Why would there be a war in Ukraine? Why would there be conflicts in Africa? And yet we see the failure of multilateral institutions to bring about peace. We've seen the epic failure of the UN Security Council, whose job it is, its primary job is the maintenance of international peace and security. So I don't think there's any order at all. There is disorder. But unfortunately, we don't have any system of global governance that can meet the challenges which are political, security, economic, climate change, the whole gamut, which is why this year the Secretary General had called for this Summit of the Future to actually review where multilateralism stood and how it can be renewed, how can also countries recommit themselves to achieving SDG goals. So I think the world is at an inflection point. It's certainly not at a point where there's any kind of order emerging from anywhere.
Right, please stay online with us, Dr. Sahiba. We have a panel of guests also in the studios. Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, the Prime Minister talks about, because now that Dr. Maleeha Lodhi, alluded towards climate change, our Prime Minister also said that Pakistan emits less than 1% of global carbon emissions. But despite that, we see the effects that climate change has had on a country like Pakistan. We've seen the dastardly floods that hit us in 2022, and that was totally unexpected. And we don't know what is in store for us in the coming years. There was a report way back that talked about drought in Pakistan in the year 2025 as well. So, on the one hand we have floods, on the other hand we have drought, and all that is due to climate change. We have COPs, we have pledges, but nothing properly materializes as a result of that. I mean, we have the Pakistan case as an example. What role could the United Nations play as far as that is concerned? Implementation of the pledges, implementation of the statements regarding climate change.
Absolutely, you are very right. This is the need of the time, that we should have a specific environmental policies, because Pakistan alone cannot do anything. It's again an international agenda and should be addressed in the United Nations, because all of the states are eventually going to suffer. All those the superpowers who are more responsible for this climate change and all this disturbance, they have made peace with it, and they are not doing anything. They are not actually giving a complete attention to the issue. And on the other hand, the Asia and the Africa, they are suffering because of the droughts and the floods and everything. And we are already we are considered as underdeveloped states, and we are suffering more and more because of what they have done, because of their industrial revolution, and they should be accountable. And on multiple forums we have heard that United Nations, they have raised this issue, and they have asked them to you are accountable for it, and you should make a proper policy, sit together and come up with a better, proper, concrete solution. Because once we are talking and doing conference and we are not doing nothing, so it eventually it is going to harm them as well. Sooner or later the evil is coming to them as well.
Of course, it is going to knock at their doorstep sooner than later.
But unfortunately, United Nations Forum is for the the conferences and just the talks. Probably that's what I assume, and no more concrete solutions. But the more mature and the more serious approach from the all superpowers, this is the need of the time. This is important. They should be serious about it.
All right. Dr. Saira, our Prime Minister talks about the international financial architecture. He says it needs to be reformed. How can it be reformed in your point of view?
Well, I am not expert in the realm of the economy. Overall, restructuralization of the international forums is required. As far as concerned about the international financial institutions, we are living in a, like Dr. Maleeha has just pointed out, that there is disorder. We are living in a period where the transitioning is taking place, and the old institutionalization that has been made in the post-World War II period, that needs to be reformulated, and that needs to be re-evaluated, where there is a rise of new actors, there is a rise of new factors. Now we are living in a world where there is integrated economy, but there is a shift from the economic relations also, or economic balance of power, when we indicated that. Previously there was more economic relations among the developed nations, but now there is more economic relations between the developing nations, like the rise of BRICS and all that. So I think there is a need to ponder over institutionalization of international financial institutions as well. So he rightly pointed out.
All right, Zamir Saab, when you look at global issues that are currently prevalent, and we all know what they are, because we just discussed Palestine, Kashmir, Africa, Ukraine, and there is a certain tendency to expand on that war. There are certain vested interests that do not want localization of these conflicts, but a regionalization or internationalization of these conflicts. I understand, as Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha also said, that the United Nations General Assembly is a lot of statements but not much action. Isn't it time to change all of that?
You are absolutely right. I endorse it. In fact, in 1945, UN was established. Its charter was written by very professional people, very skilled people, very capable people, and it was very perfect. But definitely, they were human beings. They cannot foresee things beyond their limitation. For example, at that time, there was no blast of BPs and walkie-talkies and no mobile, no 5G, no internet, no these things.
True, true.
So their vision, they were very capable people, but their vision was limited. At that time, the United Nations Charter was very effective and very useful. But with the passage of time, the world has getting more complexes, more problems, and now it is time to reform the United Nations. And I think that there is a lot of debate going on
in fact, in the General Assembly also, there were a lot of debate as far as a reform process that need to be initiated.
Yes, yes. And if we see, United Nations failed to stop genocide in Gaza. United Nations failed to stop war in Ukraine. United Nations failed to settle down the Kashmir issue. In many parts of the world, there are so many issues going on, and United Nations is failed, is helpless. I mean, United Nations is just a resolution, a piece of paper, or just instruction or decision. They have no power to implement. And unfortunately, some of the countries has hijacked some of the international organizations. They have more influence on these organizations like IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UN Security Council. They have the veto powers, and sometimes they deliberately don't solve the problems. So this is the time we have to think smartly, wisely. There is one voice from the African nation, because Africa is one of the worst victim of current era of the Western world. Coercion, slavery and disputes, internal, external, a lot of problems.
Yes.
And there are some debate that Africa should be given a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council with the veto power. I believe the Muslims are also the victim of the world. Currently, all the Muslim countries are in a very bad situation. The Muslims constitute 1/4 of the world's population. Every fourth person in this world living is the Muslim. Around 2 billion Muslims are there. And Muslim countries are rich in the natural resources, especially the energy, oil and the gas. Muslims has played very important role in the global economy.
So there needs to be a synergy as far as the Muslim world is concerned.
There is also need to give a representation of the Muslims countries or Muslim nation in the United Nations Security Council with the veto powers.
Dr. Maleeha, Lodhi, what kind of reforms should happen now in the United Nations now that we see a lot of resolutions not being implemented, a lot of resolutions being said as being non-maintainable? How can we bring in reforms when the members of the United Nations Security Council have the right to veto any such reforms?
Well, the short answer is you can't. Because reforms, any reform of the UN Security Council, I have been involved in the negotiations for reform of the Security Council for 5 years. These negotiations have gone on for more than 20 years. Why haven't they gone anywhere? And the reason is very simple. There is no consensus on how to reform it. And even if tomorrow there is a consensus, which is hugely unlikely, the process of reform is so cumbersome because all 5 permanent members of the Security Council will have to agree and endorse this reform. Plus, you will need a 2/3 majority of the UN General Assembly to pass a resolution, which again would have to be approved by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So I really don't see a reform of the Security Council anytime, certainly not in my lifetime. It's not going to happen. Nobody gives up power voluntarily. And the permanent 5 are not going to give up either their veto power or their permanent status. So that's not going to happen. What can happen and should happen is that other multilateral institutions, like, for example, the IMF and the World Bank, should now reflect the shifting balance of power from the West to the rest. And the UN, also other bodies of the UN can also be reformed to reflect a much more multipolar world. Let's not forget the structure of the United Nations. Where did this come from? It was put together, so was the Charter, by victors of the Second World War. So it is archaic. It's out of date. It reflects the power relationships of that time. Which is, over 70 years ago. therefore, reform is not going to happen. So, we can talk about reform till the cows come home, but it's not going to happen because of the reason that I mentioned. Unless permanent themselves decide that they want reform, which they don't.
But I think this is the need of the hour, and like you yourself have said that you worked for around 5 years just for these reform process, but nothing happened at the end of the day. But the fact is, sooner or later we have to move towards these reforms. If we don't move towards reforms, then what happens to all of the resolutions that are present in the United Nations? What happens to the efficacy of the United Nations as an organization and that of the United Nations Security Council? If countries move for their own personal benefits as far as global geopolitics and geostrategic situations are concerned, then what happens to the basic premise of the United Nations as an institution?
Well, countries always move according to their national interests. I don't know if there's a single country which will give up its national interest for the sake of another country. It just doesn't happen. However, the challenge, I think, for global leadership is to see where shared challenges, shared problems necessitate or warrant collective response. I mean, that's a reality. But at the same time, I think one has to be realistic. I mean, the world functions in a context of real politics. As I said, all these principles, etc., are all very well to declare from the forum of the United Nations. But at the end of the day, it's the powerful that control the United Nations. It's the powerful that dominate the Security Council. And as for resolutions not being implemented, that's not correct. Many resolutions have been implemented. But it also depends on, you have to understand the structure also of the Charter. The Charter has what is called Chapter 7. If resolutions are adopted under Chapter 7, and I'm afraid Kashmir and its various resolutions were not adopted under Chapter 7, then the Security Council has the authority and the power to impose sanctions on that country for non-compliance. For example, Israel has defied resolution after resolution of the Security Council. But those resolutions were not under Chapter 7. So no sanctions could be applied on Israel. I think, one needs to understand these issues rather than sort of rely on rhetoric and say, we need this. Well, we need
I think that is very important. We need to understand these whole issues and we need to move forward after understanding these issues properly and not, personalize these issues for our own individual or national gain. Thank you very much, Dr. Maleeha Lodhi, to have joined us. Last question to you, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha, and if you want to add something, you can. We have a bit short of time. Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha, you've heard Dr. Maleeha Lodhi, and I just want to understand, in this whole context of geopolitics and geostrategy and resolutions here, resolutions there, some are implemented, others are not. It's all because of who favors what and what goes in whose favor. How can the world move forward under such an atmosphere, under such an environment?
You know what, we are moving toward a regionalism, and I believe that United Nations is becoming more and more irrelevant with the passage of time, because states living in same regions, they are bringing them their own collective forum, their own ideologies, their own understanding, their own issues that they are solving, and they are trying to solve it on the regional level. That's where Mr. Xi Jinping said, okay, that's our time, let's resolve the issues on the regional level. So once the states are resolving their issues on their regions, the SCO, the BRICS and the Quad and so many other strategic and economic forums. So if there are not going to be any reform, concrete reform in United Nations, it is going to become irrelevant in near future. When it was made, that time was a liberal hegemonic days, and the America and all these Western power, they were trying to solve all the issues
but
of
the times have changed, and that United Nations need to adapt as per the new situations. Thank you very much, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha, Bhatti. Thank you very much, Dr. Saira, Nawaz, Abbasi, Zamir, Ahmad, Awan Saab. I'm sorry we couldn't take your comment of the last, and of course Dr. Maleeha Lodhi as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this part of the transmission. We'll be continuing after 8 p.m. with another host. Stay tuned. We've got lots to discuss with you. Allah Hafiz.